Good afternoon, everybody, and we'll call this hearing to order. And today the committee is going to examine the FAA's 2020 NextGen Mandate and how it's going to affect small businesses in the general aviation community. General aviation includes about 360,000 aircraft carrying 166 million passengers to 5,000 public airports in the U.S., many of which have no scheduled air service. More than two-thirds of these 25 million flight hours per year are for business purposes, in addition to more than 2,500 small businesses that provide air transportation services. General aviation employs about 1.2 million people and contributes approximately $150 billion to the overall GDP. The NextGen initiative is a project of the Federal Aviation Administration which is designed to modernize the United States aviation system by using satellite-based and digital technologies to make air travel more predictable, convenient, safe, and reliable. At a time when many airports in the United States experience high levels of congestion and safety concerns are prevalent, the NextGen initiative offers some very positive solutions. As part of NextGen, the FAA is mandating that by January 1st, 2020, all aircraft operating in most controlled airspace be equipped with technology systems that are capable of broadcasting continuous, precise positional information to ground stations and other aircraft. This technology is known as Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast Out, or what we all refer to as ADS-B out. Despite the deadline, the general aviation community estimates that so far only a few thousand out of more than 150,000 general aviation aircraft that are going to be required to equip with this new technology have done so. It seems that cost, which is a potential installation backlog, and uncertainty surrounding the mandate are creating obstacles to compliance among the general aviation industry. And it's important to address these challenges if we're going to reap the potential safety benefits that this new technology offers. And we're very fortunate today to have with us the administrator of the FAA, as well as a group of general aviation industry representatives and businesses who are going to be affected by this mandate. And we look forward to hearing their perspective regarding the NextGen mandate, its economic impact on the general aviation community, and the solutions to accelerate and make possible the widespread adoption. And I would like to thank all of our witnesses, the first panel obviously, and the next panel for being here. And I recognize Ranking Member Velasquez.
Thank you, Chairman Graves. General aviation operators and the services they provide play a key role in our nation's economy. They fly to towns not served regularly by big airlines, take families on sightseeing tours, and train the next generation of commercial pilots. In fact, general aviation directly generates more than $20 billion annually and has an overall economic impact of nearly $80 billion, employing nearly 500,000 workers. General aviation's future success, however, is linked to continually improving safety across the entire civilian aviation industry. With this goal in mind, the FAA has embarked on the NextGen initiative, a large-scale modernization of air traffic control utilizing the global positioning system and other technologies. GPS provides pilots and air traffic controllers numerous advantages over the old radar-based system, namely access to precise, real-time data on an aircraft's position, altitude, and speed that does not degrade in bad weather or over rough terrain. The FAA has mandated by 2020 most aircraft will need to be equipped with ADS-B out and equipment to broadcast GPS data to both air traffic control and other aircraft in the area. By combining these technologies, FAA hopes to improve general aviation safety record, increase utilization of airspace and airports, and reduce environmental impact from noise and emissions. SDSB is also likely to help rescuers locate survivors more quickly in the event of an accident. However, these benefits are not free. In its rulemaking, the FAA estimated the cost of equipping the general aviation fleet will be between $1.3 and $4.5 billion. Some industry stakeholders suggest SDSB could cost $8,000 to $30,000 per aircraft. During today's hearing, I am interested in learning whether this cost will come down as more equipment is certified and installation ramps up. There has also been criticism that FAA's outreach on the 2020 mandate is lacking. Since not all aircraft will need to be equipped, pilots and small operators have become confused about whether the requirements apply to them. This could result in planes unnecessarily adding this equipment or unintended violations. Providing clear, concise instruction on the mandate should be an FAA priority going forward. In addition, delays in certification are another area of concern. These delays could prevent new businesses from opening and existing businesses from complying with the 2020 mandate. Pursuing policies that can improve safety are necessary. However, they must be data-driven, clearly articulated, and with minimal delay to prevent excessive industry burdens. More sophisticated avionics technology promises a new era in civilian aviation, one that is safer, more efficient, and better for the environment. However, all of us must work together to ensure delays and costs are minimized. I thank the panel of witnesses for traveling here today, and I look forward to their testimony. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Our first witness today is the Honorable Michael Huerta, the Administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. And in that role, he oversees the safety and efficiency of the largest aerospace system in the world, and he manages a $15.9 billion budget and over 47,000 employees. He's also responsible for leading the FAA's multi-billion-dollar NextGen initiative. Administrator, thank you for being here, and we appreciate your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman Graves, Ranking Member Velasquez, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about NextGen and the benefits and challenges of equipping aircraft to take advantage of NextGen capabilities. Even though it's been more than 100 years since the Wright brothers made history at Kitty Hawk, the thrill and wonder of flight comes alive each time a General Aviation pilot takes to the skies. Our aircraft are far safer today, and they're much more powerful. And NextGen procedures give General Aviation pilots unprecedented access to runways across America thanks to GPS. NextGen technology brings weather and traffic information into the cockpit and gives pilots better situational awareness, which enhances safety. The entrepreneurial spirit shown by the Wright brothers, which this committee supports, is alive and well in General Aviation. The industry contributes about $40 billion per year to our nation's gross domestic product, and it creates 500,000 jobs. NextGen strengthens this economic engine by making our nation's airspace more efficient. One of the foundations of NextGen is satellite-based surveillance. As we've discussed, the technical name is Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast, or ADSB. We've completed installing the ground infrastructure required for ADSB, more than 630 transceivers nationwide. This is an extremely important milestone, and I'm proud of the work that has brought us to this point. But what does this mean? What benefits does this bring to the General Aviation pilot? There are considerable benefits available right now to those who equip with ADSB long before the 2020 mandate. We now have ADSB coverage in remote areas where radar coverage was limited before. This includes the Gulf of Mexico, mountainous regions in Colorado, and low-altitude airspace in Alaska. ADSB helps pinpoint hazardous weather, and it gives pilots important flight information, such as temporary flight restrictions and notices to airmen. The highly precise GPS-based surveillance provided by ADSB is also improving our ability to perform life-saving search and rescue operations. Air traffic controllers have better information about an airplane's last position, thus helping to take the search out of search and rescue. ADSB technology allows General Aviation pilots for the first time to see what air traffic controllers see. Cockpit displays show the location of aircraft in the sky around them, creating an environment of shared situational awareness. Pilots are already seeing the additional benefits of ADSB in better weather, better traffic, and situational awareness, and we believe that they will equip to enjoy these benefits. ADSB out is a foundational element of NextGen that allows us to bring these benefits and a host of others to airspace users. Now, I want to clarify that equipage for ADSB out will only be required in certain airspace. That is airspace where we require transponders today, so that aircraft can be seen by controllers. Now, this, of course, includes airspace located around busy airports. But if a pilot flies in uncontrolled airspace, where no transponder is required today, there is no requirement to equip the aircraft. Now, we're confident that the general aviation community sees the advantage of investing in the new technology, and ADS-B is no exception. Right now, owners of 74,000 general aviation aircraft have chosen to equip with a type of GPS technology known as Wide Area Augmentation, or WAAS. This is not required by any rule, but WAAS allows pilots to use next-gen approaches at smaller airports that do not have instrument landing systems. This opens up access to airports across the country, and many WAAS receivers already come as a package with ADS-B out. Nevertheless, we are very aware that increased technology requires investment, and we're doing everything we can to facilitate low-cost alternatives for the general aviation community. To meet the minimum requirements for ADS-B out, you need three things: a GPS receiver, an extended squitter or universal access transceiver, and an antenna. You can buy just these three things, or you can integrate with other technologies and capabilities. We've done a lot of work to certify a range of products, and companies are responding, which spurs competition in the marketplace. We encourage aircraft owners to equip soon so that they can take advantage of the benefits of NextGen. The increased accuracy, predictability, and enhanced safety that come with NextGen are taking aviation to heights that no one could have imagined in the early days of aviation. We appreciate your help in laying the groundwork for a modern air transportation system that will benefit generations to come. This concludes my oral testimony today. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Administrator. And obviously, just called a series of votes, and we'll try to run through the questions real quick, and then we'll go to the next. And mine, which I'll just jump right into, when we passed the FAA reauthorization back in 2012, a lot of people don't realize, but Congress put together a program to incentivize and accelerate, obviously, next-gen installation through FAA loan guarantees. And it has been 2 years, and this financing mechanism has yet to be started within the FAA. And I'm just curious about the implementation of that. And also, have you considered using the SBA to, get a, enter into a understanding with them or get best practices? They obviously deal with this sort of thing all the time, and are very well equipped to process that. But I'd be very curious where we are in that process.
Sure. As you pointed out, the Act did include permissive authority to establish a new loan guarantee program. And in 2012, we had 2 public meetings and issued 2 market surveys to seek input from interested stakeholders on which next-gen capabilities, what are needed, and then also what would happen in the face of this financing opportunity. We also held meetings with aircraft operators and potential private partners. In December of last year, December 2013, an interested private partner submitted an application to the FAA for an incentives program specifically targeted at general aviation. We're currently reviewing that application, and we're working with the DOT's Credit Council. The DOT does oversee other lending programs on the viability in the application and the program. We do currently lack one provision, and that is the necessary appropriations authority in order to implement a partnership incentive programs with a private investor. But as we work through the application, that is something we would need to work through with the appropriators. Now, this would certainly accelerate next-gen equipage. We believe it would do that. And we also know that there are currently many other private sector non-subsidized lending sources that are out there to pilots, including a program that is being overseen by AOPA.
And we'd love to help you out with that, too, as far as appropriations. We do think that it can be run much like some of the SBA programs in terms of ultimately being neutral in terms of revenues, fees, being able to cover everything, obviously. But we would love to work with you and work through that process, because I think it's a program that is going to work. And I do. I don't think the appropriations request has ever actually been made either, and we have to have a request from FAA too before we can
Yeah, and it would be based on the scoping of the program, and since we have this single application that we're looking at, it would be based on what comes out of that.
Thank you, Member.
Mr. Chairman, okay, so I just would like to ask you, what do you need the appropriations for?
The Congress long ago recognized that authorizations for agencies to provide loan guarantee programs could have an impact on the Treasury if the potential liability wasn't recognized. So, pursuant to the Federal Credit Reform Act of 1990, a requirement that loan guarantees be accounted for in an Appropriations Act, notwithstanding any other provision of law. So what we need in an Appropriations Act is essentially the ability to enter into the program.
But also under the Act, the costs of guaranteeing and administering the loan program could be offset by fees charged to lenders and borrowers, similar to the 7A.
Sure.
My question to you is, have you ever contacted SBA so that you could draw from their experience in this area?
Yeah, and we have contacted everyone that administers guarantee programs, and essentially what the appropriation deals with is not specifically an appropriation of the fee.
Okay.
What is an appropriation for is a risk premium, as for any lending program in the situation which could emerge of a loan default or something like that. That's what we need the Appropriations Authority for.
Okay. What happens if a small operator cannot get equipped in time due to conditions out of their control, like supply chain issues or installation backlogs?
Well, as of today, right now, we have no installation backlogs, nor do we have a backlog in certifying repair stations to do the installation. We're still 5.5 years out, and it's for that reason that we encourage people to get ahead of this so as to ensure that we don't have an installation backlog as we get to January 1st of 2020. We do think there are benefits for early adopters because they are able to take advantage of the safety benefits as well as the operational benefits that come from deployment of ADS-B, but we don't want people to wait.
Okay. FFA's strategy right now is to bring everyone into compliance at roughly the same time. Can you explain the pros and cons of this approach?
Well, the requirement was implemented in 2010, and it provided a 10-year implementation period for commercial, non-commercial, all users of the National Airspace System to be equipped with ADS-B out by 2010. And the reason for that is that you can only have the safety benefit as well as the foundational efficiency benefits that come through ADS-B if everyone is equipped. Otherwise, there is no incentive for, because you'll have a moving target there. So you need everybody in the program in order to get the benefits across the National Airspace System as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be relatively quick. As a VFR General Aviation pilot, I can tell you, you've answered my questions. My biggest concern would be the exemption for someone flying in uncontrolled airspace. I think that's necessary. You've answered the question. I also think your 10-year rollout is quite reasonable. And the fact that you can get benefits today, I can imagine a lot of people would go ahead and move forward. And there's always a cost issue to most anything. I don't think the cost here, for most people that are flying airplanes, there's a basic cost in that hobby. And while there is a cost here, I don't think that's going to be a detriment to those who want to continue flying, and I think the safety far outweighs it. So I applaud everything you're doing there. But let me bring up one thing maybe a little bit off topic. I was county executive of Erie County when Colgan Flight 3407 went down a mile from my house. That was about 5 years ago. And as frustrated as I was and others with some of the FAA delays on the safety issues that came out of the Airline Safety and FAA Extension Act in 2010, they're mostly now implemented. The pilot fatigue, the pilot training, and the new licensing requirements are all now implemented, and that's good. But could you quickly update me on the last remaining piece, which is the pilot record database? In this case, the pilot had failed several check rides. He did not disclose that on his application to Colgan. There was no way for Colgan to verify that, in fact, this particular pilot, and it was 100% pilot error, crashed because of the lack of knowing that he was frankly just not qualified. Can you update me and those in Western New York especially where we stand on the database?
Sure. To go back to the beginning, the Act required a 90-day period to begin the development on the pilot records database, and we did meet that. We established an aviation rulemaking committee in February of 2011, which delivered their report to us later that year in July. In August, we issued what we call an info. That's an information for operators to ensure that the industry is aware of the need to retain records, all in anticipation of the development of the planned pilot records database. In August of 2012, we conducted 2 IT proof of concept tests to determine whether we have a workable technical solution, because this is information that comes from a whole lot of different sources. Based on those results, we did initiate a rulemaking and are currently working toward the development of the notice, which we hope to publish soon.
Any guesstimate on when this might be finished?
I'll have to take an IOU and get back to you.
Yeah, could you?
Yeah.
I get questioned about that all the time.
Sure.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Schrader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming, Administrator. Appreciate it very much. What sort of can you describe briefly your outreach to the industry and before the mandate came out and stuff, so we have a clearer impression of how the stakeholders were involved?
Well, as part of, we're working with the various industry groups that represent the segments of the general aviation industry. You will be hearing from them in the second panel here on this hearing, but that includes the manufacturers who represent the avionics manufacturers, as well as many of those that are in the business of the installations. We are working with the electronics industry, who represents both users as well as repair stations that supply it, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association.
I was referring to before the mandate and stuff.
Before the development of this, it was done through the standard public process that we would do in terms of outreach for any rule that we would develop and any mandate, notice and comment and consultation with stakeholders.
Okay. The questions come up about why not use the SBA for the loan program, and you indicated that there are a bunch of agencies that do have loan incentive programs. The SBA, I would respectfully suggest, is uniquely set up to do that sort of thing, rather than have the agency itself recreate another process or bureaucracy within itself. It might be smart to contract out with the SBA or pick an agency, but SBA is small business friendly. They get that. They have a lot of experience with the guarantee type programs. And have you actually talked to the SBA and gotten involved with them in a discussion along these lines?
I have not, but our credit team and our finance team have talked extensively with the government partners, about how to structure this. But to be clear, we are not proposing to set up a bureaucracy or an office to do this. The application we have is from a private lending entity that we would simply be providing the guarantee behind.
Okay. And I'm fine with a private entity as long as they're reputable and will follow through on that. I just would suggest the agency might be smart to have at least someone to compare, the two, make sure, compare apples with apples, frankly, but I think it's just an option there. And then the request for the appropriation authorization, that's a technicality, it sounds like. When do you think, given working with the provider, maybe the outreach here to the SBA, when do you think that might occur?
Well, it has to be done in an Appropriations Act, and so it's however that it's.
So it's probably next year is what you're suggesting, unless there's a specific bill that deals with this alone?
Probably. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then I guess I just want to thank you personally for how the agency works. I've had opportunity to reach out to the agency on more than one occasion. We get responses. We get telephone calls back. The contract tower program is a big deal for a lot of small airports around the country, a lot of general aviation folks. And we had an airport in Aurora we were concerned about personally. But I think just you guys, played straight with us, talked about what was in the appropriations bill or not and how that might happen. And I just appreciate the way the agency conducts itself and wish other agencies do the same thing. With that, I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. With votes, we'll go ahead and move to that. If any other members have a question for the administrator, please submit it, and I'll make sure you get it.
Thank you.
And I would hope to, I don't know if you can leave one of your staff around to hear the industry experts in the next panel.
Absolutely, we will.
That would be fantastic. We appreciate you coming up, and apologize for the votes, but thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And we'll go ahead and seat the next panel while we're in recess, and we'll be gone for a little bit. All right, we'll call the hearing back to order. I apologize again for the vote series in the middle of this. But our first witness today is Ms. Paula Dirk. She's the president of the Aircraft Electronics Association, which is based in Lee Summit, Missouri, which I'm very proud to represent. As president of AEA, Ms. Dirks presides over an organization that provides regulatory representation, training, and member services to more than 1,300 general aviation electronics entities in 43 countries. She was named president of AEA in 1996 after beginning her career there as managing editor of Avionics News. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your testimony.
Chairman Graves and Ranking Member Velazquez and members of the U.S. House Committee on Small Business, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today to speak about the benefits and the challenges of the NextGen Mandate on the general aviation industry. My name is Paula Dirks, and I'm the president of the Aircraft Electronics Association. And as Congressman Graves said, we're an international organization representing nearly 1,300 companies, of which nearly 80% are small businesses. Included in our membership are nearly 200 avionics manufacturers, many of whom are producing systems to meet ADS-B out requirements. Our largest category membership is the 900-plus government-certified repair stations, with approximately 700 of those located here in the United States and certified by the FAA to maintain and install avionics, and an additional 200 repair stations in more than 40 countries around the world. My comments today will focus on three primary areas. Number one, industry's ability to meet the mandate. Number two, certifying new equipment and receiving field approvals on the installation. And number three, the refocused effort needed from the FAA leadership to expedite implementation of this safety-enhancing technology and sign off on the congressionally authorized financial incentives for the aircraft operator. Right here today, on this date, repair stations have the capacity to perform ADS-B installations at a rate necessary for the expected 160,000 general aviation aircraft to comply with the mandate by January 1, 2020. Obviously, demand is expected to increase as the deadline nears, and a recent survey of our membership indicates that more than 75% of the 700 U.S. repair stations will expand and hire new employees and new technicians and support staff. This alone is job creation. But industry has received mixed signals from the FAA in regards to the mandate, and this leads to confusion, rumors, and mistrust of the very agency charged with implementing the next generation air transportation system in our nation. As you might imagine, when it comes to being forced by a government mandate to spend hard-earned personal cash to upgrade their airplanes when benefits to the private pilot have not yet been fully realized, it's not an easy sell. But since the mandate was first announced in 2010, my association, along with our sister associations, have worked hard to educate industry and encourage early equipage. From day one, Administrator Huerta's office has been a vocal proponent of NextGen. They have promised a reasonable transition, and they've worked to make sure the ground infrastructure is in place, only to have their efforts derailed by the back office of the FAA, whose individual interpretation of the rules, excessive micromanagement on projects, and personal opinions compete with the overall objectives of this program. Rumors are swirling that the mandate will be extended. These rumors and mistruths create a very confused consumer. Several of our repair stations tell us that their customers, the aircraft operators, have decided to wait until the last minute to equip because they assume the FAA will operate as usual with delays, and they'll have to extend the deadline to equip. And for operators who have decided to equip early, the FAA is still a constraint. We have a member in Las Vegas who supports a helicopter fleet operator wanting to equip a fleet of 90 helicopters. He currently has the correct ADS-B equipment installed, but because his aircraft has not been FAA approved for ADS-B operations, he can't turn the system on. Keep in mind the systems he is installing in this fleet have already been approved by the FAA in thousands of airplanes, but because this is a fleet of operators of helicopters, the approvals don't count. So the penalty for this operator who's willing to early equip is experiencing 6 months of costly administrative burden and tens of thousands of dollars in certification fees. To avert a chokehold as early as 2016, the certification and approval process must be streamlined. The AEA is also helping promote the NextGen GA Fund. This fund is designed to take advantage of the public-private partnership funding authorized by Congress. It creates low-interest, privately funded, government-backed loans for aircraft operators. The lack of FAA's willingness to embrace the fund is a testimony to the cancer that has wreaked havoc on the agency for the past decade. The agency seems to have a culture of can't rather than a culture of can-do. We simply ask the FAA administrator to restore the culture of can-do to his agency and encourage his workforce to work with the industry. This should be a partnership with a shared goal, and that being safety and efficiency. It is this type of historical culture that has created the greatest general aviation industry in the world. In closing, the challenges that we ask Congress to address include an effort by the FAA to incentivize aircraft owners by immediately signing the loan guarantee certificate for the NextGen GA Fund, streamlining the certification and approval process, and restoring aircraft owners' confidence in the FAA that this deadline will not be extended and their money will be well spent. Thank you for this opportunity to testify on behalf of the general aviation electronics industry.
Our next witness is Tim Taylor, who's the president and CEO of Free Flight Systems, which is an aviation manufacturing company based in Texas that's developing innovative solutions to assist in next-gen compliance. Mr. Taylor has 35 years of leadership experience in the aerospace and defense industries, and prior to starting Free Flight Systems, he was the CEO of Elbit Systems of America, a global defense electronics and commercial aviation company. There, he pioneered new technology-based systems for customers, including Gulfstream Aerospace and Federal Express. Mr. Taylor is testifying today on behalf of the General Aviation Manufacturers Association. We appreciate you being here and look forward to your testimony.
Chairman Graves, Ranking Member Velasquez, and other distinguished members of the committee, my name is Tim Taylor, and I am President and Chief Executive Officer of Free Flight Systems. Today, I have the privilege of also representing the General Aviation Manufacturers Association, and I'm honored to provide testimony to the committee on their behalf. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss today the benefits of the nation's transition to next-gen for general aviation, and to highlight the importance and ability of industry to meet the FAA's 2020 Automatic Dependent Surveillance, or ADS-B out mandate. As the leader of a small aviation manufacturing business, I thank the committee for holding this hearing and look forward to describing how next-gen avionics, specifically ADS-B equipage, is readily available, affordable, and easy to install. Free Flight Systems designs, manufactures, and supports electronic systems that enable the next-gen air traffic management transformation. We certified our first ADS-B out radio in 2011, obtained our first installation approvals in 2012, and have delivered around 1,000 ADS-B radios and around 3,000 ADS-B position sources since then. As a small business, we made the investments, over $3 million, upfront to allow aviation operators the ability to meet the FAA's 2020 ADS-B mandate. In short, we have already accomplished the heavy lifting required to make our solutions readily available, affordable, and easy to install. We are seeing rapid acceleration today in the adoption and installation of ADS-B systems in both airborne and airport surface vehicle applications. Free Flight Systems does all this as a small business in Texas that currently employs 53 people. We either perform or source our manufacturing in the United States, predominantly in Texas, but we also are part of the global aviation industry, exporting around 40% of our products. The potential benefits of next-gen to the aviation community are significant. The transformation enables improved safety, increases the capacity of the airspace system, and reduces the cost and complexity of air traffic control. For GA operators, many of these benefits, such as access to weather and traffic information, or ADS-B-in, are immediately available upon appropriate equipage. But realizing the full potential of next-gen across the national airspace system will require significant additional work by the FAA. The more airplanes that equip, the more dramatic the improvements in capacity and safety become. The full potential can be realized only when all aircraft in controlled airspace are equipped, which the FAA has mandated by January 1, 2020. The rule and mandate were established early in 2010, giving aircraft operators 10 years to equip. Equipment manufacturers have had longer. The system architecture was finalized in 2007, and the rules and requirements have not changed substantially since then. The ground infrastructure for the system is largely deployed and is operational across the country. There are no regulatory or infrastructure barriers to full equipage to meet the mandate. This long-term stability is essential if small businesses are to participate in the next-gen transformation. For the light end of general aviation, ADS-B equipment can be relatively inexpensive and easy to install. Free Flight Systems offers complete solutions today at a list price that is less than $4,000. That's what it looks like. There's a small system there. And we are seeing installation times that are typically in the 20 to 40-hour range for a total cost of $6,000 to $8,000. Now, this estimate includes rule-compliant ADS-B out as well as ADS-B in for aircraft that have no modern avionics at all. In newer aircraft, ADS-B in, for example, can utilize an existing display to show beneficial situational awareness. In an old aircraft that has not seen a new piece of avionics since the 1960s, ADS-B can simply utilize an iPad. For NextGen to be effective, however, systems users need to adopt the technology. For the system to work to its full potential, every aircraft that enters controlled airspace needs to meet minimum equipage standards, or it will disproportionately disrupt operations. A mandate is the only way to ensure that happens and to ensure that everybody who invested in the new system, industry, users, and government, get the return they deserve on the investments that they have made. In our view, the best incentives from government and industry are already in place: infrastructure, firm schedule, stable requirements, and aggressive pricing. However, there is always more that could be considered. One area of concern is the inconsistency in the application of certification standards across different FAA branches and regions. Many NextGen programs are being given priority in modification approvals, but strong leadership and training can address these inconsistencies, reducing delays and increasing the number of installers willing to aggressively price and perform ADS-B installations. Low-interest government-backed financing has been discussed in the marketplace and authorized by Congress and is popular among free flight customers. Congress should examine how this can be made to move forward. The timed introduction of next-gen technologies is vital to supporting the safe and efficient operation of our nation's airspace system and to maintaining U.S. global leadership in aviation. Any wavering or mixed signals hurt next-gen progress, safety, and small businesses that are playing by the rules. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Our next witness is Bob Hepp, who's a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and owner of Aviation Adventures, which is a flight training school based in nearby Manassas. After graduating from Bowling Green State University and obtaining his private pilot certificate in 1977, Mr. Hepp joined the Army and in 1989 started Aviation Adventures with one aircraft operating off a public ramp in Lawton, Oklahoma. Aviation Adventures has won the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association Outstanding Flight School Award twice and won its 2013 President's Choice Award for innovative contributions to the flight training community. Mr. Hepp is testifying on behalf of AOPA, and we appreciate you being here and look forward to your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Graves, Ranking Member Velasquez, and members of the committee. I'm Bob Hepp, the owner of Aviation Adventures, a flight school with locations in Manassas, Warrenton, Stafford, and Leesburg, Virginia. Our staff of 41 employees provides flight instruction at all levels, from initial flight training through the airline transport pilot certificate. We also provide rental aircraft. I'm also representing the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. I've been a member of AOPA since 1981. AOPA's mission is to effectively represent the interests of its more than 350,000 members as aircraft owners and pilots concerning the economy, safety, utility, and popularity of flight in general aviation aircraft. My testimony today will cover following points. One, the general aviation community has long supported the move from ground-based to satellite-based navigation. However, at this time, the benefits associated with the FAA mandate are unclear and inadequate for many general aviation users. Number two, the FAA's mandate to equip ADS-B out by 2020 is costly and will be prohibitive for most small flight schools, businesses utilizing aircraft, and recreational aviators. Three, providing low-cost guaranteed loans for GA equipage and leveraging existing cockpit technologies such as handheld devices can help move next-gen modernization forward without imposing unmanageable burdens on small businesses. For most general aviation pilots, there is no direct benefit of the ADS-B out mandate. Complying with the mandate will simply allow pilots to continue using the national airspace system that they're using today. Complying will be prohibitively expensive for many small aviation businesses, including flight schools. Aviation Adventures owns and operates 39 aircraft. I estimate that the total cost to equip these aircraft for minimal compliance with the ADS-B mandate will be $312,000. A major investment for small businesses and many flight schools, one that many flight schools will be unable to make. Unlike investing in additional aircraft or facilities, the money spent on ADS-B out equipment will not bring a direct return because it will not increase our customer base, will not allow us to serve more clients, provide new capabilities, or otherwise help grow our businesses. For that reason alone, it's not currently a sound business decision to equip early. Continuing uncertainties about exactly what the FAA will ultimately require to fulfill the mandate and the tendency of technology prices to drop over time are further disincentives to equip early. We've already seen a decrease in prices for ADS-B equipment, just as Mr. Taylor just showed us, since the mandate was finalized in 2010, making it in the best interest of business owners and aircraft owners to wait before making that investment. Because of the high cost and low return on equipping for the 2020 mandate, general aviation operators need a little assistance. The establishment of a fund to continue low-cost, federally guaranteed loans to equip GA aircraft could provide the financing needed to meet the mandate. Handheld devices currently provide ADS-B in information, significantly enhancing safety at very nominal cost. Many aircraft operators are already using handheld devices in the cockpit, and similar technology could be used to provide ADS-B out. In conclusion, I believe in its current form, the current ADS-B out mandate fails to provide affordable benefits and support for general aviation operators. We look forward to working with the FAA to help develop affordable ADS-B solutions for general aviation operators and to help the FAA in their efforts to educate the general aviation community on the benefits and options provided by these solutions. On behalf of the 41 employees of Aviation Adventures and the more than 350,000 members of AOPA, I appreciate your leadership in addressing the concern of the GA industry and also to continue to help small businesses thrive and grow nationwide. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before the committee.
Oh, to introduce, yeah, right. I'm sorry. I'm kind of lost. I'm just working on the questions as I listen to you. Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's my pleasure to introduce Kenneth Button. He's the University Professor of Public Policy at George Mason School University, where he's the Director of the Center for Transportation Policy, Operations, and Logistics. He has published or has impressed some 80 books and over 400 academic papers in the field of transportation economics, aviation policy, and related subjects. Professor Button is the editor of numerous academic journals in the fields of aviation and aerospace policy, tourism, and transportation. Prior to coming to George Mason University in 1997, he served as a transportation expert for the OECD and taught at several universities throughout the world. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Graves, Ranking Member Velasquez, and committee members. We're clearly going through an age of technical change. We're moving from a technology in aviation, which is probably 80 years old, to one which is really 20 years old. I don't mean that in any insulting fashion. We want a technology which is robust. We don't want today's technology. This change is clearly causing and likely to cause some friction. It's not easy. My recent experiences have mainly been in Europe. We've got something like 35, 40 countries trying to move forward in a single European skies, very similar to the NextGen initiative here. I would warn of delaying any introduction of ADS in this country. Europe has done this so far once. There were plans in Europe to introduce ADS for new aircraft from 2013, a retrofit from 2015. That's been pushed back for 2 years, and probably another pushback's coming. That is not the way to incentivize introduction of new technologies. So I would hope people will stick firmly to the 2020 deadline. I think it's very important that this is done. In terms of the benefits of the pros, if you like, of ADS, I think there are safety benefits, but they increase exponentially as more people adopt the technology. It's no good having one or two people. And in the long term, I think one has to think of a full arrangement, including ADS in as well as ADS out. Aviation is growing in this country, and given the licensing, I believe it was yesterday, of a drone service in Alaska, we're going to see unmanned vehicles out there as well in larger numbers, I believe, over the next 20 or 30 years. And there's a need to actually integrate the two sectors, the manned and the unmanned. And I think moving towards ADS is one element in that. In terms of the costs, which I think can be questioned in some senses, it is not an easy thing to adopt a new technology. It does cost money. The FAA has put money into the ground facilities. That's not a small sum of money. And the airlines, the commercial airlines are putting equipment in, and the general aviation community are. I think that the costs sometimes which are missed in the general aviation community are actually the time it takes to put this equipment in. A lot of general aviation does involve commercial activities, air taxis, training activities, and business jets, and there's a downtime equipping the new technology. So the cost is not simply the financial cost of acquiring the technology, it's also the implementation and setting up of the arrangements to have it installed. There are issues which I think we've been discussed. I want to spend a couple of minutes, though, just talking about the transition. Transitions into any new technology have two elements, if they're any use: a stick and a carrot. The stick in this case is you've got to have it in place by 2020. Bang. The carrot, it seems to me, is the problem. The initial ruling was made in 2010. That's 4 years ago. There should have been some initial thought about how to incentivize early uptake at that point. You don't wait until halfway through and then move forward to a situation of offering loan guarantees, etc., to help people adopt the new technology. There is a problem here. Partly, obviously, there seems to be some difficulty with the FAA implementing the current arrangements, but one would have hoped perhaps one would have moved more rapidly at the early stages to get people to equip much more quickly so you don't get any potential backlog. Other countries are doing things differently, and it's worthwhile looking at them. I'm not saying they're better. I personally don't think they are. Canada tends to be using a sort of geographical outward movement, taking airspace which is currently under no radar control and introducing ADS there and expanding it geographically outwards. Other countries, I believe Australia, are trying to expand it downwards, higher flights requiring equipping before flights at lower levels. So there are options. I'm not altogether sure they actually are better than the one in the US. I think the bigger bang approach here, where everyone has to have it in controlled airspace, is a wise and sensible one. My concern is quite simply that the incentive structure has not been developed quite as thoughtfully as it might have been. And I appreciate within that there are budgetary constraints at the macroeconomic level which did slow this down. But one would hope that the FAA will now move forward more rapidly and get moving on putting in place the finance which is going to be available to help with the adoption of ADS. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll move to questions, and we'll start with Mr. Hanna.
Thank you. I mean, there's pretty much unanimity here that, and who can blame anyone for believing that bureaucracies won't meet deadlines, make rules clear, put people in a position where they spend money that they find out that they didn't have to or didn't have to in time, or to your point, Ms. Dirks, technology changes. Who knows? So the biggest thing you're all asking for is some degree of certainty. There's plenty of ways to finance things. We could do it through the FAAs or the small business is one of them. It strikes me that you can't blame people for waiting to the last syllable of recorded time with our history on most everything in government. So I'm a pilot. I certainly wouldn't go out and, I bought an ELT that I was required to buy, and to transfer frequency. Sam knows about it, and they still don't need the old one, and it's years. I can really appreciate Mr. Herta's point, Administrator, who is moving forward to do his job. And it's more about setting deadlines, meeting deadlines, having guarantees, and a flight school that has some 32 planes, you said? 39 planes. You know, $300,000 is a lot of money, but let's be honest, you need to train all those pilots to use this equipment because it's going to be what they're going to use. So certainty for you makes a big difference too. And you could probably do it easily over time, but much less easier if you, if you put it off, but you're not really sure that you don't have to or couldn't put it off. So I wish I had a question to ask you. I just sympathize with all of you. And with that, I wonder, though, Mr. Hemp, because you're right in the thick of this. You're in a tough industry, training people, a very expensive fleet, and a lot of people. So you're probably the person who's most detrimentally affected, being in the low end of GA, with all due respect. So you're kind of prepared to do this, but you're concerned that you're going to do things that won't benefit you, that cost you a lot, and maybe the FAA will make a mess of it. Would you like to respond? I mean,
that's pretty much the crux of the issue, is that, as Ms. Dirks pointed out, like anything else, if you buy a flat screen TV to put up in your house today, the only thing you're going to be guaranteed is that next year or 2 years from now, you can pay half the price for that same TV. And the same thing is going on in electronics, just like Mr. Taylor just pointed out to us. So there's no incentive to wait. The only thing that is going to happen is the capabilities are going to go up, the prices are going to come down, the mandate date may shift backwards, it may change, they may abandon it. They had the microwave landing system a number of years ago that they started, and it went away. So the only thing that we know is that what we're dealing with today is not going to be what it ends up in final state. So there is no incentive right now for an operator to equip early, but the benefits come from, as Professor Button pointed out, from everybody going out there and equipping early, because it doesn't do any good to have that technology available in your cockpit if there's nobody out there transmitting the ADS-B out signal to be received. Mm-hmm. So that's the issue that we're at. And if everybody waits to the last minute, we're not going to have the capacity.
But every incentive is pointing to the notion that people should wait to the last minute.
Exactly.
Because of the way the process is not just rolled out, but to Ms. Dirks' point, the way technology is put together, the way pilots can afford. I mean, I can't tell you the number of GPSs I've owned in my life. And you know, there's always something new, fancier, better, that really is better. I'm just glad I'm not you today. Mr. Taylor, you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to talk to that a little bit, because I'm in the technology business, right? So I'm the GPS guy. The GPS in this thing, this is a UAT. This is a transceiver with GPS in it. The GPS in that is a 2003 kind of vintage WAS GPS. It's been updated a little bit in the last couple of years, but that technology is mature. And I cannot make that particular GPS, I can't make it any smaller, I can't make it any less expensive, and certified. There are certain minimum standards we have to meet with this kind of equipment that you can't go below. This is a primary air traffic control device. So you put it on your aircraft, and from that moment on, other aircraft around you, the rest of the world, is depending entirely on what comes out of this box to make decisions about separation, movement of aircraft, and so on. So the standards that you have to meet are not going to drop. They're not going to drop below the standards that are there today. They were well thought out. They were well established. I can't build this any cheaper, I'm telling you. I cannot build this any cheaper than I'm selling it today. This is priced. I'm buying these buying materials in quantities of 1,000. I'm not selling in thousands. I'm selling in hundreds, so I'm taking risks on that. But that's the price. The cost is not going to go down of the equipment. And I think in terms of the rules themselves, in my testimony, I'm asking the rules not to change. I think the rules should not change. I think the rules will not change. I think it would be very nice to really hear the FAA in some consistent and concrete way tell us that. But barriers to equipage, we are seeing people equip. Just one more little thing, I'm sorry. There are benefits today, by the way. So the FAA provides to users of this equipment traffic information, weather information. That comes today. You don't need everybody to equip to that. That happens today. For a flight school, we can provide you fleet tracking. So you can use the ADS-B technology to track the assets that you have flying for safety, for fuel efficiency, for many reasons. So the technology, the raw technology is really just a cornerstone of many, many, many exciting applications, many of which are available today.
My time's expired. Thank you for your indulgence.
Ms. Velasquez?
Professor Button, you mentioned that other countries have taken a different approach to implementing satellite-based air traffic control, for example, Canada's geographical spread system. Do you think a different approach would have fewer negative impacts than FAA's current strategy?
Probably not. I think the big thing you have to remember about the United States is the sheer scale. It dwarfs any other general aviation market in the world. There are some figures in my written documentation to give you an impression of this. I think when you have a large market of this kind, you really have to go for a big bang approach. It's pretty heterogeneous. Markets interact with one another. And I think of these as markets. I'm an economist by training. So I think the US has actually been very wise in taking a big bang approach. It's not totally big bang because uncontrolled flight space is still does not require ADS. So it's not a complete coverage of the system, but it's fairly reasonable, I think, given the nature of the country, given the nature of general aviation here.
Thank you. Ms. Dirks and Mr. Taylor, you both mentioned rumors that the FAA may delay the 2020 mandate. Yet, the administrator today stated that that will not happen. And I just would like to hear, why do you think there will be a delay?
As of today, we don't know that there will be a delay. I'm simply expressing that those are the stories and the rumors in industry right now that, based on FAA's past history, there most likely will be a delay. In the past 5 decades, I don't know of one avionics mandate that has not received an extension by the FAA. And I think I can speak for Mr. Taylor. We're both asking for the FAA not to extend this mandate, to try to meet the January 1, 2020 mandate and work with industry to help us educate the consumer as well.
Okay.
Just to add, we hear it from customers. So this is where we hear the rumor. When we're talking to customers about equipping, then one of the reasons that they give is the reason you gave, that the FAA has never successfully brought one of these programs in on time. And that is the concern. I agree with Paula. We're not seeing, the FAA seems to be doing all the right things in terms of providing the framework, providing the rules. And we are not seeing any sign that they are wavering. But a couple of years ago, I was hearing them shouting from the rooftops that there will be no waivers, no exceptions, you've got to do it. I haven't heard that so much recently. So it would be nice to hear that shouting from the rooftops again.
Okay, so you all touch on the need for a loan guarantee program and to help general aviation operators purchase equipment. Is there any data available to support this assertion?
I can give you a very small sample. We're a small company. So 2 weeks ago, we made 70 outgoing calls to people who had asked about this system and who had quoted to but hadn't purchased. And we asked them, are you going to purchase? What's the decision? 17 of them purchased, which was wonderful, by the way. 10 said they were waiting for the loan guarantee program.
They're waiting for the loan
guarantee. It had been announced. We had announced it. We thought it was happening. So that was that. And then the others were various, not decided yet.
Yeah. I am troubled with the fact that, in reference to the question made by the chairman and followed by me regarding the loan guarantee program, he stated that they need an appropriation language or an appropriation. And when I read the statute, the reauthorization, it says, subject to the ability of appropriated funds, the Secretary may use financial instrument to facilitate public-private financing for the equipage of general aviation and commercial aircraft. To the extent appropriations are not made available, the Secretary may establish the program provided the costs are covered by the fees and premiums authorized by the subsection. So what it means, Mr. Chairman, is basically that they have the authority to create a program that is offset with the fees. So we should send a letter to the administrator asking clarification. And if, in fact, there is no appropriation, the fact of the matter is that they haven't submitted a request for such an appropriation. So it clearly, the message is that they have no intent to create such a program. And so the authority is there, and we should request clarification or a certain date that they are going to have a program up and running. Okay. So I would like to ask Professor Button, as you know, congestion around airports results in delays and reduced safety if air traffic control cannot accurately track aircraft both in the air and on the ground. How does FDSB technology help controllers better manage traffic around airports?
Well, in a number of ways. One is you have immediate information, the current system of primary surveillance, where you send the beam out and it bounces back, that there are gaps in the information. So you've got more continuity in the information flow you've got. There is the ability also to see them fairly easily. I think the main advantage will come with congestion when you get both a full implementation of ADS in and out, so that the airlines can come through and they can sort of interact with one another. It's a difference between commercial aviation, scheduled commercial aviation, I should say accurately, and other forms of aviation, in the sense that they actually, in a sense, operated from the ground. They have ground controllers who maneuver the commercial aircraft we fly in to put them in order for landing, to make connections and so on. That would be improved. And UPS is clearly using it in some of the freight carriers, which is advantageous to them. General aviation, it's not at many places going to have a huge impact on congestion, I don't think, because a lot of the flying is done at relatively small airports. Not always, of course. So the main gains, I think, here with congestion are probably more with the commercial scheduled carriers, because they can manage their schedule better. But of course, there are some airports which do have quite significant general aviation, particularly business aircraft coming in, and there again the controllers have more information of exactly where things are. And the other factor, I think, is the weather information we keep forgetting. There is some free information in this. Weather information and other information of that kind can also affect decisions of pilots of how to approach delay flights and so on, which can be helpful in congestion control.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lukemeyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A lot of the questions I had have already been asked here, so let me just start with Mr. Hepp, you mentioned a while ago something about a handheld device. Has the technology gone to where it's a handheld device now, where it's something smaller and easier to handle, cheaper, or something like that, or are we headed that direction? Or
what's available right now is ADS-B in technology in a handheld form.
You consider that handheld?
There are devices. This is this would go actually installed on the aircraft, but currently there are applications, iPad applications out there, ForeFlight, Garmin Pro, several others, that then can be mated with an antenna using either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth technology. And that antenna is entirely, it's got a self-contained battery. You just turn it on, set it someplace where the antenna has a view of the sky, and you get all of the ADS-B in information that's available. So any aircraft that is equipped with ADS-B out technology, you'll see that aircraft pop up as traffic on an iPad screen. And also the weather information that Professor Buttons was talking about is available from the ADS-B sites that are now, I believe that array of sites is fairly robust in the U.S. So weather information then is also immediately available to pilots at a very low cost. The antennas out there currently run in the neighborhood of $800. And then the iPad and the applications for the iPad are somewhere between $75 and $150. So for that minimal investment, you can get all of the or most of the benefits of ADS-B on the inside, but the requirement is for ADS-B out to broadcast your position information so that other ADS-B users with an in capability can see your position.
Okay. Somebody mentioned a while ago something about drones. Do drones have to have this device? Professor Buttons, is that you?
Very good question, actually. I have no idea. One would hope they probably do. There's only been one license granted, as far as I understand, and that was to inspect pipelines in Alaska. That was yesterday, I believe. But they clearly, the FAA is looking at drones very carefully, and they presumably, I've not thought about this, come under general aviation. Like hot air balloons do, so drones presumably.
Mr. Taylor, want to answer that?
There's work ongoing right now in this, and the FAA recently set up 5 different test sites across the country to manage integration of UAVs and manned aircraft at different levels. One of them's in Texas, A&M's doing it. One's in Nevada, and I think that you'll see the technology will become part of the solution for putting unmanned vehicles in the airspace. But in terms of...
But it's not required right now?
It's an airspace rule. So the way the FAA and we're on the joint government industry working group for ADS-B, and the way it's been explained in that working group is that it's an airspace rule. So it doesn't matter if you're an F-16 or a UAV or a home built.
Gotcha.
You are going to have to comply with the rule to operate in that part of the airspace.
Very good.
But may I also comment quickly on
Sure.
the ADS-B out technology again and the handheld? We firmly believe that you should not use any kind of portable technology for ADS-B out. For ADS-B in, I agree. But for out, as I was saying earlier, you land at an airport in a small aircraft with a 757 landing next to you. He's going to be making decisions, and air traffic controller is making decisions, safety of life for him and for his people, based on what you're saying coming from your aircraft. And I think you do not want that to be from something that you put in your pocket and walk away from the aircraft with. It's just not that kind of technology. It has to be installed, verified, and proven.
All right, very good. Thank you. Mr. Button, Professor Button, you talked about some of the stuff that went on in Europe with regards to delays. What was the outcome of the continuing to delay? Were there negatives? I mean, people get hurt, costs go down. That's a positive. What did you see from those constant delays?
Well, it's constant. There's one delay from new aircraft 2013. That's a very serious chance of coming. 2015 for new, 2017 for retrofit. As far as I know, there's no detailed studies of this.
Okay.
There's no studies of this. It's very difficult to pick up because of the...
if something doesn't happen,
it doesn't happen. It's very difficult to get the counterfactual, if you like, of what's going on.
Right.
I think it's rather indicative, though, of a bigger problem in Europe. The European initiative of the Single European Skies, of which ADS is a component, is really to integrate, depends how you do your numbers, 37 different systems. You've got one system with the FAA here. So the problems are different. General aviation is hardly mentioned in the discussions, quite bluntly.
Okay.
Military aviation is, because we've got a whole set of disparate military airspace. But general aviation is not a major consideration.
Thank you. My time's up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Quick question for Mr. Irks. If we don't start doing some installation pretty quickly, we're going to run into a real backlog problem. Would you agree? If you just do the numbers.
Most definitely. You do the math. When we can safely do 100 installs today's date, but every day that is delayed and every day that there might not be incentives such as a government-backed loan program, those daily installs will increase. And you do the math with the approximately 700 U.S.-based repair stations that are capable of doing ADSB out installs, you can quickly surmise that we're going to have a huge backlog.
Well, for my final questions for each one of you, real quick, if you could give the FAA one piece of advice on moving forward with this, now's your opportunity. What would it be? Mr. Bunn,
You're looking at me. Get moving with the cash.
Mr. Hepp?
I think if they worked a little harder to educate the general aviation public as to what the benefits and the timeline, and reinforce that they're either going to slip the timeline or they're going to hold on the timeline, and then to make it very, very clear to operators at each level, whether it be a flight school, an individual operator, a business that owns an aircraft, a charter operation, each type of business, to let them make informed decisions on when they are going to equip their fleet, what makes the most sense for them to equip their fleet to meet the requirements of the 2020 mandate.
Mr. Taylor?
I would say hold fast to the mandate, hold fast to the rules, and provide leadership for your field operations so there's consistent application of regulation across all installs.
Ms. Dirks?
And I'm going to expand on that. I would ask them to better communicate headquarters to the aircraft certification offices, to the flight standards, district offices, to the rotorcraft, the airport or airplane directorate, and the small airplane directorate. Communications so that they are uniform in their regulations, in their certifications, and in their installation approvals as well. And to please sign the loan guarantee for the finance incentive program.
Well, I want to thank you all for participating today, and your testimony is going to help us better understand both the benefits that the FAA's NextGen initiative is going to provide, as well as the challenges to the GA community, what it's going to face in complying with that 2020 mandate. And it's clear that widespread industry adoption is going to be vital in this whole process. But in order for it to occur, the GA community has to have a way of equipping. But it's been an honor for me and the other committee members to hear the FAA administrator and to hear you all, the industry leaders, and I appreciate you coming in, some of you from a long ways, but I'd ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to submit statements, supporting materials for the record. Without objection, that is so ordered, and with that, the hearing is adjourned. Thanks.